Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. This ship looks like a cargo freighter. Big, slow, and boring. The kind of thing you'd see floating near a moon, carrying space rocks or fuel. But this one? It wasn't carrying anything. In fact, it was completely empty, except for one small room at the very center. And inside that room was the most important meeting in the galaxy. Dozens of alien leaders sat around a silver table. Long arms, glowing eyes, tentacles, creatures from every corner of the stars. They were making peace, ending years of war. The room was quiet, serious, historic. But there was one problem. Not a single human had been invited. Back on Earth, our scientists had been watching the stars like always. Satellites were listening. Telescopes were blinking. But no one saw this coming. When they finally picked up the signal, it was already too late. The meeting had started. No one asked us to join. No one told us where it was. It was like we didn't matter. Like the aliens wanted to shape the future of the galaxy without us. So we did what humans do best. We showed up anyway. And we didn't knock. We crashed the meeting, and not just by walking in. We literally crashed. Our ship came in fast, too fast. There was shouting in the cockpit, sirens, and then, bang. Metal scraped against metal. Lights flickered inside the alien chamber. Heads turned. And just like that, humans were in the room. For a moment, everything was still. The humans didn't move. The aliens didn't speak. The only sound was the soft hum of the space station's power core beneath their feet. Then came the alarms, sharp and loud, echoing through the metal walls. Red lights spun overhead. A giant four-eyed guard reached for a weapon strapped to his chest. One of the human crew, a young pilot named Rhea, slowly raised her hands. "We're not here to fight," she said. Her voice was calm, but her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. "We're here because you didn't give us a choice." That sentence made the whole room pause. Because the truth was, Earth had been quiet during the last few years of the galactic war. We weren't the biggest planet. We didn't have fleets of warships or laser cannons or gravity bombs like some of the others. But we watched. We learned. And when the war ended, and everyone else got an invite to the peace talks except us, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a message. They thought humans didn't matter. They thought we were too small, too new, too loud, too dangerous, or maybe too unpredictable. But what the aliens didn't understand was that peace affects everyone, even the small planets, even the young ones. If humans weren't at that table, then every decision made in that room would be made without us. Where new trade routes would go, which planets would be protected, what punishments would be given if someone broke the peace, and worst of all, what would happen if war ever came back. If Earth didn't have a voice, we might end up in the middle of a galactic rule book we didn't help write. We could be told where we could travel, who we could speak to, what technology we were allowed to use, or worse, we could be cut off completely, locked out of the stars, like a kid being told to sit in the corner while the grown-ups made the rules. That's why Rhea and her team had come. Not just to listen, not just to watch, but to stand up and say, "We're here too." Humans were part of this galaxy now, whether anyone liked it or not. And they weren't leaving. Not until someone listened. The room stayed quiet for longer than anyone expected. Ria's team stood near the broken doorway, their ship halfway lodged into the corridor behind them, smoke curling into the polished chamber. The aliens still hadn't spoken, but their eyes, or whatever they used for eyes, were locked on the humans. Then, finally, one of them stood. She was tall, with silver skin that shimmered like glass in sunlight. Her arms were long and jointed backwards, and her voice sounded like wind through leaves. Her name was Valari of the Anarim, and she was the one who had called the peace talks in the first place. She looked at Ria and said, "You risked war to sit in a room that never belonged to you." And Ria answered without blinking, "We risked war to stop one." Valari watched her a moment longer. Then slowly, she turned to the others and said, "Let them speak. If they want a place at this table, they should understand why it was built in the first place." And so, the history of the talks began, not from the beginning of time, but from the last great war that almost tore the stars apart. It started with the Zorites, a brutal fire-born species from the volcanic moons of Delkar. They believed in strength, raw, crushing strength, and they thought the galaxy needed order, their kind of order. They built machines that swallowed planets and ships that moved like shadows. They conquered 12 systems in 5 years. Then came the Tixari. They were quiet, smart. They lived inside floating cities and used time like a weapon. Where the Zorites used fire, the Tixari used logic. They outplanned, outmaneuvered, and sometimes just disappeared. But they hated the Zorites, and when the war began, they didn't hide. And finally, the Ventran, peaceful, soft-spoken beings made of living mist. They had no weapons, no armies, but they had something even more powerful: trust. Everyone listened to them, even the Zorites, sometimes. So when battles burned across the stars, it was the Ventran who begged for peace, again and again, for decades. But peace didn't come. It took one final battle, the kind that changes everything, to finally stop the war. The Battle of the Black Moon. Billions died. Entire moons were cracked open like eggs. And when the smoke cleared, no one could even remember what the war had started over. Only that they were tired, exhausted, afraid. And so, slowly, talks began. Valari explained how the Anarim had reached out to all sides, using hidden networks of translators and neutral ships to carry messages. It was delicate, dangerous. One wrong word could restart the war. But somehow, they did it. They picked a place. A hollowed-out asteroid turned into a floating embassy. They set rules. No weapons. No armies. No threats. Only words. And when the first session began, representatives from 11 star systems showed up. They were angry, suspicious, but they came. And over time, a kind of trust began to grow. A fragile one, like glass. But not a single human was invited. Valari paused here, looking at Ria again. "You weren't forgotten," she said. "You were avoided." Ria didn't flinch. Why? The answer wasn't simple, and Valari didn't get the chance to give it. Because just then, something outside the station began to move. A shape drifting just beyond the glass. It was dark, fast, and very much not part of the peace talks. Everyone turned toward the viewing window. Beyond the thick curve of glass, something large and silent slid into view. a dark shape against the glow of a nearby gas giant. It wasn't moving like a rock or a comet. It had purpose, and it was close. The alien delegates stiffened in their seats. One of the Tixari blinked 3 times, a signal for their ship's AI to activate defensive protocols. In the silence, Rhea stepped forward. "That's not ours," she said. And she was right. Whatever was out there, it wasn't from Earth. It wasn't a human craft at all. But before we get to what it was, it's important to understand why we even knew about this meeting in the first place, because we weren't supposed to. Every alien representative at that table had made sure of it. Their peace talks were sealed tighter than anything Earth had ever tried to sneak into. Their comms were encrypted with quantum keys, and their coordinates hidden inside deep space static. But that's the funny thing about humans. We're not good at being left out, and we're really good at finding the cracks in things that are supposed to be perfect. The signal came to us by accident, or at least that's what everyone thought at first. It was picked up by a small listening station in Earth's orbit. Nothing fancy. Just an old satellite relaying background noise from deep space. Most of the time, it sent back static, or the hum of faraway pulsars. But one morning, a technician named Arun noticed something strange. A rhythm in the noise, not a natural pulse, like a star, not random either. It was musical, like a song made from light. He ran it through a filter once. Nothing. Twice. Still nothing. But on the third pass, a pattern emerged. Bursts of compressed data wrapped in radiation echoes. Aaron didn't know what it was, but he flagged it and passed it up. By the time it reached the Space Council, the data had been decoded into coordinates. And a time. The location? Deep behind Saturn. The time. Just 5 days away. And the file was labeled Treaty Chamber, Entry 01. That's when the Council realized something massive was happening. A secret. A meeting they were never meant to see. Earth's leaders debated for hours. Some wanted to ignore it. Others said we should wait, let the aliens make their own peace. But a small group, the bold ones, said no. If a new future was being written out there, Earth had to be part of it. So they chose a team, a small one, just 5 people. Rhea was one of them, the pilot, fast, fearless. She'd flown between asteroid belts with her eyes closed. Then there was Cal, the tech officer, who could hack a drone with a spoon and a shoelace. Mira, the linguist. Jonas, the defense specialist. And Elon, the diplomat, soft-spoken, serious, but sharp. Their ship was light, stealthy, barely armed, not meant for battle, just speed. The mission was clear. Get to the station, enter quietly, make contact, and prove that humans deserved a seat at the table. It was risky. Maybe even a little foolish. But humans have always been like that. We'd rather be in the room, even if we're not wanted, than be left behind forever. But now, standing in that room, after the crash, after the alarms, after Velari's warning, something else had arrived. Something uninvited. And for the first time since the meeting began, the peace talks were truly in danger. The object outside the station hadn't moved, not yet. But it was watching. Inside the chamber, the tension was rising like steam. Alien delegates whispered in sharp, quiet voices. Their translators buzzed softly as languages layered over one another. Clicks, tones, and even thoughts, for those who communicated telepathically. Velari raised a hand, signaling for calm, but her silver skin had lost its shimmer. Even she was uneasy. Rhea kept her eyes on the shape outside the window. It didn't have lights, no visible engines. It was just there, a silent dot in space. But every instinct in her body told her the same thing. This wasn't random. And this wasn't good. But none of it would have mattered if Earth hadn't made the decision to crash the peace talks in the first place. Because up until that point, we were just ghosts in the story, watching from a distance, never seen, never heard. That wasn't going to work anymore. So Earth built a plan, and like most human plans, it was part brilliance, part chaos. It began with timing. The council knew the meeting would happen 5 days from when the signal was found. That gave them just over 100 hours to prep the mission. Not much time, but enough. Barely. They picked a ship, the Odyssey's Edge, a prototype built for speed and silence. Its engines ran cold, its armor reflected radar, and it could skim the edge of a gravity well without being pulled in. Perfect for a stealth approach. Next came navigation. Saturn's rings are beautiful, but deadly, full of debris, shifting rocks, and icy shrapnel moving faster than bullets. Cal, the tech officer, programmed a route that slipped the ship between gaps no wider than a doorway. One wrong move, and the edge would have been ripped apart before it ever reached the station. Then the cover story. Earth couldn't send a formal request to join the talks. The aliens might erase it before even reading. So they disguised the ship's signal to look like space junk. A floating hunk of old metal. A burned-out probe from a dead satellite. Rhea had to fly it like that. Blind, pretending to be trash. They'd drift in close, power down, and then strike. But the landing, that part didn't go to plan. As the ship neared the station, a perimeter drone woke up. A silent sentry, designed to scan for unexpected visitors. It swept the ship with a blue beam, just once, and that's all it took. The Edge's systems flashed red. Rhea had to choose, run or crash. If they ran, they'd be chased, shot down. No time for talking. If they crashed, maybe they'd survive long enough to speak. So she chose to crash. The hull slammed into the outer ring of the station, tearing through a docking bay wall. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. Inside, the team braced. Cal hit the emergency seal. Mira grabbed the translation core. Elan held onto the diplomatic scroll. Not that it helped much, in the end. They burst into the meeting chamber with smoke behind them and alarms screaming over their heads. And just like that, Earth was at the peace table. Uninvited, unwelcome, but undeniably present. Now, as they all stared at the silent shape beyond the window, Rhea wondered, was their crash the only surprise today? Or had they accidentally brought something with them? Outside the window, the dark shape began to move. Not fast, not aggressive, just closer. It drifted like a shadow across water, silent and smooth without any visible propulsion. No thrusters, no trail. Just a slow, steady glide toward the peace station. Every delegate in the chamber was watching now. Even the Ventran, who rarely showed alarm, had gone still, their mist-like forms curling tighter, darkening at the edges. Rhea turned to Cal. "Is it ours?" she whispered. Cal was already checking his scanner. He shook his head. "No signature. It's not broadcasting anything. It's not even bouncing back our scans. It's like it's eating the signal." "Cloaked?" asked Jonas, tense. "No," Cal replied, swallowing. It's worse than that. It's dead. It's not giving off any heat, not a blip of radiation. It's like it's not really there. That made Mira step forward. There are legends, she said quietly, among the Solarans, stories about ships that move without heat, that drift between stars and collect knowledge, or prisoners. They call them the Quiet. Valari's voice cut through the tension. Those are myths. Scare stories told to keep hatchlings close to home. We have no confirmation that... Then the lights went out. Not just in the chamber. The entire station dimmed to emergency lighting, plunging the grand hall into a cold red glow. The delegates leapt up. Panic bloomed like wildfire. Security drones hummed to life above their heads. A few alien guards reached for their neural rifles, aiming them at the humans. "Stop!" Valari shouted, raising both arms. "This isn't them. This is something else." She turned toward the humans, her eyes burning bright. "Did you bring it with you?" Ria's face was pale. "Number, I swear. We didn't even know it existed." "Then why did it follow you?" A delegate hissed. A Zorite general with armor fused into his chest. "It arrived after they did. Coincidence?" "This thing didn't follow us," Eileen said, finally speaking up. His voice was steady, calm, and somehow louder than it should have been. "It followed the signal, the same one we heard, the one you didn't want anyone to hear." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then a quiet alarm beeped from Cal's wrist console. He looked down. "It's docking!" That one sentence dropped a silence over the room that felt heavy, like gravity had doubled. Outside the window, the dark shape had stopped moving. It was now perfectly aligned with one of the lower airlocks. An unused port no one had paid attention to. Not a single hull breach. Not a single tool had touched metal. But somehow, it was connected now, like it belonged. Valari's second in command, a small creature with glassy scales and 6 hands, pulled up a floating screen. "No breach detected," it said. "No data intrusion. But..." Its voice changed, almost unsure. "There is now a door that wasn't there before." On the lower level of the station, deep beneath the meeting room, a hatch had appeared. Smooth, black, and featureless. Just a circle in the floor. No handles, no markings, nothing mechanical about it. Ria stared at the image. "That wasn't part of the station?" "No," Valari said, voice tight. "And it wasn't part of your ship either." Jonas stepped forward. "Then whatever it is, it wants to be here." And with that realization, the energy in the room shifted again. This time, from blame to dread. Because the peace talks weren't the only secret in the galaxy. Something had heard the signal. Something old. Something watching. And now it had arrived. No one moved. The hatch on the lower level stayed closed, but it pulsed gently with a dim, bluish light, like it was breathing, alive somehow. Not a machine, but not organic either. It had no seams, no bolts, no sign of how it had been placed there. It had just appeared. Cal tapped frantically at his console. No signal. No electromagnetic waves. No network traffic. Nothing. Whatever this thing is, it's not using technology the way we understand it. Valari took a step forward, but she didn't get close. She simply looked at the screen as if trying to remember something. "The Ventran once warned us that not everything in the stars seeks war or peace. Some things seek balance, correction. They don't talk, they act. Ria's eyes narrowed. So what is this? Some kind of alien judge? Valari didn't answer. Instead, the hatch opened. It didn't hiss. It didn't slide. It simply melted away, like fog vanishing under sunlight. A long black tunnel now stretched down into the floor with no visible end. Only darkness, thick, total, endless darkness. One of the delegates stepped back and vanished in a shimmer of light, teleporting away. A second followed. Panic began to rise again in the chamber. "We should leave," said the Zorite general, already speaking into his comm link. "This is a trap. The talks are over. We were fools to trust." "I wouldn't do that," Mira interrupted softly. The general stopped. His expression twisted. "And why not, human?" Mira looked back at the screen showing the tunnel. "Because if it wanted to kill us, it already would have. It didn't break through. It didn't fire. It just opened a door. That means it's waiting for something." Cal nodded slowly. "Or someone." Jonas stepped beside Ria, lowering his voice. "This smells like a test." "I know," she whispered. "Are we taking it?" "We already are." Valari turned toward the human group, watching them, calculating. Her voice, when it came, was even. "You crashed into our chamber. You interrupted a moment that took centuries to build. And yet, now that this thing is here, I find myself thinking you may have been the signal it was waiting for, too." Ria didn't answer. She was still staring at the black tunnel. It was strange. The longer she looked, the more it didn't feel like just a hole. It wasn't a door to somewhere. It was a door into something. Something ancient. Something impossible. And deep inside her, the pilot who had flown through asteroid belts, the girl who had stared up at the stars from the edge of Earth's last desert, felt a single, terrible truth settle into her bones. That whatever lay inside that tunnel knew her. "It's pulling something," Cal said suddenly. "Look at this." He projected a scan. A soft wave, invisible to the eye but strong on sensors, was rippling out from the hatch. Gentle, rhythmic. It wasn't radiation. It wasn't sonar. It was almost like a heartbeat. And as it pulsed, something happened across the station. Old panels began to flicker. Lights changed color. Messages scrolled across displays in languages no one had programmed. Even the peace table itself, carved from the crystal of a dead star, started to hum softly. The station was responding. Not in fear, in recognition. "This station is older than we thought," Valari murmured, stepping closer to a control console. Her fingers brushed symbols hidden beneath the surface, and they lit up. It was built by the Anarim, but not designed by us. It was given to us, donated, long ago, by a race we never met. They left before we understood what they were. We called them the first architects. Ria stared at her. "And you built your peace talks on top of it." Valari nodded once, "because we thought it was neutral ground." Ria turned back to the tunnel. Now it didn't look so much like a threat as an invitation. The invitation hung in the air like gravity, heavy, inescapable. The glowing tunnel, the heartbeat hum, the way the station itself had started listening. None of it was coincidence. This wasn't just about peace talks anymore. This was something older, bigger, and deeper than anyone in the chamber had planned for. Vilari took a breath, her long silver fingers tightening behind her back. The first architects built the foundation of many worlds, she said, almost to herself. They seeded the stars with structures, tools, libraries, sanctuaries. We thought they were gone, or that they had simply moved on. But what if this is them coming back? Or checking on their experiment, Mira murmured. Elan stepped forward now, calm, deliberate. We're standing in a place meant for unity. The peace station wasn't just for talks. It was a key, a testbed. Maybe this door is only activated when enough species come together. Or when someone steps out of line. Jonas raised an eyebrow. You think this is a reward? No, Elan said. I think it's a judgment. A hush fell over the room, because judgment meant risk. It meant someone, or something, had the power to decide who belonged in the future and who didn't. A Ventran delegate floated forward. Its voice was a low vibration in the walls. We must send a probe. No delegate should risk direct entry. Not yet. But Vilari shook her head. A machine would be ignored. If the architects open this door for us, they will only respond to the ones who can understand. Choice, intention, curiosity. She looked directly at Rhea. They want a person. And somehow, everyone in the chamber turned to the humans. Maybe because they had arrived uninvited. Maybe because they were the variable no one had accounted for. Or maybe because they were the only ones reckless enough to say yes. Cal blinked. We don't even know what's down there. There's no map, no comms, no idea if it loops back or goes on forever. That's true of most things worth doing, Mira said quietly. Exploration, peace, even trust. Jonas looked at the tunnel, then at Rhea. You're thinking about going in. Rhea didn't reply right away. Her mind was racing. She hadn't asked for this. None of them had. Their mission was simple. Crash the talks, get a seat at the table, make sure humanity didn't get left behind. But now, the table had become a doorway, and that changed everything. She turned to Vilari. If I go, what happens here? Vilari tilted her head. We wait. And hope the station doesn't decide to seal itself. Seal? The architects were never known for giving second chances. Rhea sighed. She looked at her team. Cal gave her a short nod. Mira's eyes were wide but steady. Elan stepped closer, voice low. You don't have to be a symbol, he said, but you are one. She chuckled, bitter and tired. That's what I was afraid of. Then she walked toward the door. No ceremony, no music, no guards flanking her. Just boots against metal, echoing softly down the curved hall as the circle of black swallowed her step by step. And then she was gone. Not teleported, not erased, just vanished into the tunnel. The heartbeat slowed. The hum quieted. The hatch remained open. Back in the chamber, silence reigned. For a long time, no one moved. Then Mira stepped forward. If she's not back in 10 minutes, Jonas started. Mira looked at him. You'll follow her? No, he said. We all will. The darkness swallowed everything. Rhea wasn't sure when the tunnel stopped feeling like a space and started feeling like a mind, or maybe a memory. The moment she stepped fully inside, the sounds of the station vanished. No footsteps, no breath, not even the faint buzz of her suit systems. Just silence, total and alive. But she could still see. Not with her eyes exactly. It was like her thoughts were being translated into light. Every step she imagined, the tunnel responded to, forming a faint path beneath her. A soft shimmer stretched out just far enough for her to take another step, and then another. She wasn't walking. She was being led. She looked behind her once. The entrance was gone. No hatch, no walls, just an infinite sea of black. And then, faint at first, something appeared ahead of her. A shimmer, a shape, a room, number. Not a room. A memory. Suddenly, without warning, she was standing in the middle of a desert. But not just any desert. She knew this one. It was Earth, the Western Expanse. The sand blew in the same rhythm as the old world's jet streams. She could even smell it, dust and ozone and old iron. She'd walked this land as a kid, with her father once, just before he'd left for Europa and never come back. But this wasn't just a memory. It was too vivid, too real. The stars above her weren't Earth's constellations. They were rewritten, rearranged in strange geometric patterns. A message, maybe, or a map. She turned, and there he was, her father, standing by the same old wrecked rover they'd found when she was 9, the one she'd scraped her knee climbing into. His face was calm, kind, but wrong, not quite human. "Hello, Rhea," he said, but his mouth didn't move. She stepped back. "You're not him." "No," the voice said, not from his lips, but from everywhere. "But this shape is easier for you." Rhea looked around. What is this place? The figure looked at her with eyes that weren't quite eyes. This is the memory of a world, filtered through you. You're reading my thoughts? We're speaking through them. You think in symbols. We exist in structure. This is the bridge. Rhea frowned. Are you the architects? The figure didn't answer directly. It turned, gesturing at the sky. One of the stars pulsed brighter. It glowed, then dropped, like a bead of light falling into the air, and suddenly became a shape. A planet hanging in midair. A projection. We made this, the voice said, a long time ago, for others. The star shifted again, now showing a space station, the Peace Station, but it was different. Younger, fewer spires, a different core. Alien figures moved across its surface, none of whom Rhea recognized. You weren't the first, the voice said, to try peace or to try war. Then what is this? She asked, heart pounding. A test? A punishment? The figure stepped closer. Its form began to shift, her father's face flickering into someone else's, her old flight instructor, then her grandmother, then a soldier she'd served with. Familiar faces, all wrong, all chosen. It is a doorway, the voice said. You forced it open before it was time. But now that you are here, it cannot be closed again. Rhea felt a chill go through her. Not from cold, but from knowing. This wasn't about the peace talks. This wasn't about humanity joining the interstellar table. It was about whether any of them, humans, Zorites, Ventran, or otherwise, were ready to inherit what came next. The figure gestured once more. The projection changed to something else now. Not a planet, not a station, a war. Ships colliding in slow motion, energy ripping through space, planets scarred by beams of impossible heat, creatures dying in the thousands, and in the middle of it, a shadow, a dark shape like the one Rhea had seen docking at the station. Watching, always watching. "We have seen this story repeat," the voice said, "again and again. Unity, then fear, then fire." Rhea's voice cracked. "And what do you do? Stop it?" "No," said the voice. "We offer a different story." The projections vanished. The desert shimmered away. And suddenly, Rhea was falling. Not down, not through space, through time. Memories, not hers, flickered past her like lightning. An ocean moon lit by 3 suns. A creature signing a treaty with scent. A planet whose population voted with dreams. A civilization that built a machine to store love. And then, silence. And then, nothing. And then, a single flickering word formed in her mind. No sound, just feeling. Choose. The word hung inside Rhea's mind like a bell still ringing after the sound had gone. Choose what? Her surroundings were gone. The desert, the stars, even the illusion of solid ground. Now she stood inside something that felt like the space between dreams. Infinite, calm, and terrifying in its stillness. The voice didn't speak again. There were no more images, just her. Then the voice returned, softer now, fainter. So be it. And the light came back. Rhea blinked hard as brightness overwhelmed her. Her body slammed into gravity again. Her ears popped. The pressure equalized. And suddenly, she was back, lying on the cold floor of the peace station, gasping, heart pounding. Cal was kneeling beside her, shouting her name. Mira's hands were on her shoulders. Jonas had his weapon drawn, but pointed low. Valari stood in the background, eyes wide, unreadable. "What happened?" Cal asked, scanning her vitals. "Rhea, what did you see?" She sat up slowly. The tunnel behind her was gone. The hatch sealed, as if it had never been there at all. But something had changed. Across the chamber, the central spire of the peace station was glowing. Lines of old circuitry, once dormant, were pulsing with gentle light. Symbols danced across the floor, now active. Every screen across the chamber flashed a new message, written in every known language. You are seen. You are chosen. Now choose each other. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Valari stepped forward, eyes narrowed in awe. The station. It's online, fully, for the first time in generations. What does that mean? Mira asked. Valari turned to face the others. It means the peace station isn't just a meeting place, she said. It's a key, a hub, a weapon, if we choose it to be, or a sanctuary if we don't. The architects built it to respond to unity, and now it has. Jonas looked at Rhea. What did you do in there? I didn't do anything, she said quietly. I chose to keep going. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was reverent. One by one, the delegates across the chamber began to rise, not to leave, not to argue, but to approach the central table again, the one carved from the crystal of a dead star. They didn't sit as enemies. They sat as invited, as equals. Later, some would call it a miracle. Others would call it first contact with a higher species. But the humans would remember it differently. They didn't crash the peace talks to demand a seat. They became the reason the talks were real. And from that day on, the galaxy remembered the door was never locked. We just hadn't knocked with the right question.